Welcome, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Wood. This is New Earth Conversations, and I'm really excited I get to speak to John Newton today. He's a teacher. He goes out into the world with his beautiful heart space to help people. He's been doing this for a very long time, and I'm thrilled to have him teach today about his perspective on our healing path as human beings moving towards a place of equanimity and empowerment. Thank you so much, John, for joining me.
I'm this is great. I love being here. You have a great community and your light is enough. I don't even need to say anything here, but we're gonna have a conversation and see what happens.
Thank you, John. So I've been looking at your work the past few days, kind of digging in so I could really find those beautiful, deep, mystical questions to ask you. And the first one I have is, where do you see that we are at right now as a as the human species here, moving towards healing every day? What do you see right now? What's your thoughts and your feelings about where we're at?
Well, I have a I have a simple solution for everything, and it's not my solution. It's I feel the solution. It's the only solution, and that's to have people wake up. Because we could have a conversation about the economy, about the environment, about racism, about disparity, about anything you want to talk about. And so many people are out there trying to fix it in the reflection, and they're walking around asleep. We got to wake up. So that's half of my practice, is to help people to point to the obvious. There's so many other people doing that, you as well, Eckhart Tolle, but that's a big part of it. And if we don't have that, then life can be a real struggle. The other half of this practice that I do is to help people clear and reset the things that weigh on them, to basically reset the past so we get a new start. And so when you have both of those things in place, when you've resolved the past hurts that our body remembers, that our DNA carries, then we don't even have to try so hard out there. It just starts to unfold, because life is a reflection of our true heart and what we're putting out.
I love that. And when you talk about waking up, I love how you describe it. You talk about being in the moment and how people, they leak all this energy, all this effort into the future, into the past, and then they don't even have a chance to act in the moment. Can you speak to what is it going to take for people who really have so much worry about the future, especially right now? What is it going to take for them?
Yeah, well, I feel like as above, so below, right? So the future is just a momentum of the past. So it's like, if you look, I love to use the Titanic as an example. If you change the course of the Titanic 1 degree an hour before the iceberg, it's going to be a completely different outcome. So people don't realize that it's like physics, right? Cause and effect. When we adjust the path from the past, paradoxically, the future adjusts automatically. And so people will ask me sometimes, like, what do you see for our future? And I'm like, well, the future is unwritten. And I feel the best book we can have to live, as far as our life story goes, is blank pages, because we're writing it in the moment and we don't know what's coming. So many people are so focused, like you said, on the worry, the things they can't control, the things from the past, and they're projecting that into the future. How's it gonna show up? Well, that's what's gonna happen. And another thing is, when you were talking about waking up, it's such a simple thing. It's not like we have to walk around like the Buddha or Jesus or some other, Mother Mary. It's really just moving from the mind into our body. It's so simple. And we have awareness, we have attention. Where is it? Most people, it's on the brain, the mind, the thoughts, the identifying with the small self. And that's very, 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 very limited. Not only that, what defines the personality or the small self? It's everything that's already happened. Well, if we look at our history, our life individually, but also our parents, grandparents, and humanity, a lot of unpleasant things happened. And most humans didn't resolve that. They still carry it. So it's a frequency match, right? So our reality is showing up based on what we carry, not on, I want to find my soulmate, I want to be wealthy, I want to be free. Well, that's great, but those are teeny, teeny little thoughts. Meanwhile, beneath the surface is the big iceberg that's putting out the opposite of that, possibly. So we want to align, right? We want to release the old stuff so that we can see the future for what it is. It's unwritten.
I love that. It's true. I always tell people you can't see the future, and any worst case scenario you end up looking at could end up being one of the most beautiful outcomes in the end. It certainly has been for me.
Yeah, it's not written. There's no such thing as the future. Now, there's a paradox to that.
Right.
People will ask me sometimes, is there fate? Yes and no. In other words, you go to the Library of Congress, is every single book in that library written? Absolutely. Does it have a beginning, middle, and an end? Yes. When you take the book out and you read only that book, is it fated? Absolutely. But how many books are there? And that's the beautiful switch, is really when you shift your frequency internally on all the realms that you carry, it's a completely different book. So that new book has a completely different ending and a different beginning. That's where it gets a little much for the mind to grasp, because we really can't grasp it with the mind. Religion has tried, it doesn't work.
Oh, that's beautiful. I like to akin the body to a house, and that the house is when we're born into a house that's already full of a whole bunch of trash bags to the ceiling, full of our ancestors' stuff, all their
Yeah,
trauma. And we're talking 500,000 years plus of trauma.
yeah.
And it's one of the most immense, we're right now it's the most immense cleanup ever done. I see that reflection out in the world as environmental issues, the way we live and subjugating the natural and subjugating the earth. It's all a reflection of how much trash bags are really in the house. So when we start moving the trash bags out of the way, we begin to remember who we are. We begin to feel the truth, which is that we have these immortal levels of consciousness in the entire body.
Yeah.
But although I know that's kind of a sort of very sad sounding metaphor, could you address how does that ancestral trauma really cut us off from our bodies? And what are your thoughts about what to do about it?
Well, exactly. That's a great question. And that's really what it comes down to. The ancestral is a lot. And we could look at a little more advanced. I know you have an advanced community here. Okay, so a soul comes into this family. Why this family? In other words, I feel it's a frequency match. Now, some people will say, oh, I chose my parents, I wanted to help out, or I wanted the challenge. I don't know that it's always that conscious, although it can be. But really, it's a frequency match based on what our soul needs to integrate, learn, awaken, whatever that is. And so we could look at that, because that's a whole nother aspect of what we could possibly be carrying. So if my soul, now I'm not saying there were other lifetimes, some people have an issue with that, but really, do you really believe this is the only chance this soul has to work things out or to have an experience? That just feels a little off to me. So I just feel there is something to that. So we include that. We call it all time, space, and dimension when we're offering the forgiveness work that we do, that is the root of the practice that I offer. So that's part of it. But when you consider the ancestral, how do we resolve that? And that's also another part of the momentum, like you talked about with the house and the trash bags. So these are just they're one and the same, but they're different aspects. We could say dimensions, that kind of thing. But really, it's just keeping it simple. I love to keep it simple. What do we feel? If there's an area of life that doesn't feel good, we notice it in our body, and there's a lot of clues in that sensation. Some people call it pain, or they say they're depressed or anxious. Those are labels. We don't do that in this practice. We keep it really simple. We stay with sensation, and then we see where we feel what we feel. There's a massive clue to that. Our body's a blueprint. So when we look at certain areas of life where we feel what we feel, it gives us clues as to where that specific hurt, burden, sin, tikkun, karma, whatever you want to call it, came from. So we address those specific areas of our lineage. In other words, if someone has maybe some hypertension, high blood pressure, and they feel it, that's called the silent killer. Most people don't feel it, but they do, because there may be a fear around it, because they get the diagnosis and then they're like, uh-oh, Uncle Harry had a stroke or a heart attack or whatever. So we address what that area of the body has to do with, and then we start to resolve those pieces. And then what we've noticed is that sometimes, and I can't make a medical claim, the blood pressure can lower, because we're correlating where the burden came from, because it's not our nature to suffer. It's not our nature to be in chronic pain or have addiction or have all these medical issues that people are having. So it's really simple. It's just resolving the burden, clearing the charge that we have to these kinds of things that are related to what's showing up. And we could even look at what's not showing up. For instance, financial struggle. Let's say someone is having a hard time financially. What's not showing up is the money, right? Or the supply or the support. So we see where they feel that. We address the root cause, right? When you're pulling weeds out of a garden, if you don't get the root, it just grows back. And so we handle that, clear that, resolve that, and then your heart can show up because you're created in the image and likeness of that which created all of this. What does that leave out? Nothing. So it's really about resolving and clearing what we carry so that the truth can show up, the truth that's already here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. I love how you go deep into the body. You're
Yes.
noticing your reactions, your triggers, your pain, the emotional body deeply integrated to every cell. Some people will say, when I ask them, where is the trauma in your body? Where are you feeling it? It'll be weird places. It'll be like their finger or their toe.
Yes, sometimes, yeah. I try to stay away from, like, I don't address trauma because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor. So I use words like sensation. I stay in the benign but powerful, still connected to source, truth, right? Because who does the work is that. So if you're religious, use the word you love, God, I love it. Some people aren't religious. Some people are of science or physics, but there is a field. And the field is a paradox because the field is where everything arises, but the field is woven with intelligence. And the intelligence actually knows how to help. It knows how to resolve. It knows how to handle things. The mind doesn't. I mean, the mind just doesn't have the access. And 99% of humans are coming from the mind, hence the problems in the world, hence the problems in their body, relationship, bank account. I mean, it's like having a 3-year-old try to drive your car down the highway. It's not a good idea.
It's true.
Yes.
So you're so spot on about how we're just living from here up. What's one of the ways you said to feel it in the body, to go into the feeling, to go into the emotional body?
Sensation. Yeah, because emotion, let me just clarify this, because this is, and you're not wrong, you're right on. But when I say I'm angry, the word anger, if I say I'm sad, the word sad, you see, these words have a charge. They have a history. They have a judgment attached to them. So we transcend all that with just words like sensation. Oh, there's heat, there's vibration, right? There's no spin on that. In other words, there's no suffering in the direct experience of sensation. Suffering comes from, oh, I'm angry, I'm so angry. And then the story, oh, they keep doing this and men are a certain way or women are a certain way and the government's a certain way. And it's like, and I'm not in my body, right? I'm up here adding firewood to a fire that I want to burn out. And then I'm surprised, why does this fire keep burning? Now I'm angry about that, right? And it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, wait a minute, how do we interrupt that? There's many ways. One is just to drop in and let go of the judgment, let go of everything. We're not asking you to do anything. I'm asking you to do nothing and then notice what's already happening. As Lao Tzu said, when nothing's done, nothing is left undone. And that's really what a big part of the practice is, because when we do that, we're bringing in that higher intelligence that knows how to handle it. I need to get out of the way. People say, oh, God's my co-pilot. I'm like, well, good luck with that. The creator's my pilot. I'm navigator. I'm maybe the co-pilot at best, right? You know, so I don't know. Just keeping it simple is a big part of it.
Yeah, and you hand the GPS off to the source field, to God, who really knows so much more than we do, obviously, because we're made of that. We arise from it, and then getting out of the way. What I do notice too, people get caught up in the story like a hamster wheel. What's one of the ways through sensation, through that stillness, when someone feels like they get dragged back into the story, how can they keep themselves from running the hamster wheel over and over again naturally while they're at home?
So around? The hamster wheel is a great one. if you look at the hamster wheel from the side, you see the hamster running around, the wheel's turning, right? If you just notice the wheel on where the hamster is focusing and looking and running, it feels like the hamster's moving forward to the hamster. It looks like forward movement. That's why the hamster keeps running, right? And no, they don't get anywhere because they're not really, right? It's the trick of the mind in a way. It's a great analogy. But if you notice the very center of the hamster wheel, there's stillness. In other words, there's not a big wheel that's turning. It's in the very, very center where everything attaches, everything actually comes from, is stillness. So we find stillness. Now, silence is just like stillness. And it's connected to consciousness. It's connected to the I am, that you are. It's connected to everything because it's nothing. What can be in my hand? Nothing. I'm holding something, right? Now what can be in my hand? Well, nothing's in my hand. So what can be in my hand? Anything, everything. It's a paradox. But the mind's afraid of nothing. It's afraid of silence. It's afraid of stillness. It wants to fill in. And what it fills in with is fed by what we carry, what we feel as sensation in the body. So, and a great example is if someone takes a muscle relaxer, I'm not saying to take a muscle relaxer, I'm just saying when one does, they start to notice more pleasant thoughts because the musculature, all the places that they held all the stuff, is artificially balmed, is artificially calmed, is artificially released, temporarily, of course. And they start to have pleasant thoughts. Well, why is that, right? It's a perfect example. So we want to clear what we carry in the body, what we hold in the body. And the challenge is, like you said, with the house and the trash bags, is people have been filling the basement, the attic, the closets. They start to put them under the rug. Have you ever tried to put a trash bag under a carpet? You're not fooling anybody, right? So it's like, and then we don't want to have anybody over. Why would we want to have anybody over? What if they look in the closet? What if they go in the basement, right? So then these kinds of people avoid relationship. They avoid taking risks. They don't look at their dreams anymore. They just play it small, play it safe, survive, right? And it's like, because how can I have anyone over? And that's a great symbol of, right, letting life in and all that, so.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. I love the relaxer. It reminds me too, when I especially work with men will hold all their emotions and the sensations and the history, the story in the body so intensely. And then when I see if they'll try to find a sensation, they can't. They can't even do that because they're so pent up and so physically in pain. What's something to help through the stillness? So we got the stillness, finding the 0 point, finding the way to step off the hamster wheel through the center, the middle way, that stillness. And then when someone is really having a hard time finding sensation in their body, what's something that comes to mind that could help people who are so tense they can't even feel anymore?
Yeah, so I love those kinds of people because I'll have people come to me and say that they have alexithymia, and that's a diagnosis where someone can't feel. And I've disproved every person that's ever said that to me. And it's fine, I don't judge it, but they start identifying with a diagnosis or something and they think that it's real. And sometimes it can be. I'm just saying I haven't seen it. So I have them go with the tension. I don't try to pull a turtle out of its shell. I have people be where they are. And that's the first step. If you want to get to Chicago, let's say, the only necessary thing to get to Chicago is to know where you are. The paradox is your heart knows where Chicago is. It actually knows where you are, but the mind has other plans. So when we're just aware of where we are fully, our intuitive, our inner guidance, our GPS, whatever you want to call it, knows how to get to Chicago. But if I'm denying where I am, which is what most humans are doing, they don't feel all this beautiful intelligence is coming through the nervous system, showing them, guiding them, leading them, trying to, and they have other plans. And they're turning their back on that impulse, that light, that guidance, creator, call it what you want. So I just have them go with where they are. And I say, you feel tense, you feel resistant. I want you to be fully resistant. I want you to be fully tense, because that's where you are. I'm not going to try to, when a dog's hurt its leg and it's lifting it off the ground, if you try to pull that dog's leg, it'll pull it higher. But if you go with the leg, if you go to the direction it wants to go, the dog will lower that leg to the ground. So you want to work with the energy that's present. You want to work with the substructure, the resistance, you're calling it. It's great. That's what people call it. Or they say they're stuck. Nobody's stuck. It just doesn't feel good where they are. We just need to see where you are, address what's going on one at a time, not overwhelm, because people go into overwhelm. Oh, I have 50 things. Well, good luck with that. Let's pick one. And then it's all connected, right? So those kinds of people, there's many ways to get them in their body. There's many ways. But the first step really is to have them be where they are and honor that. Because validation is everything with this practice. The versions of us as children, the inner child, whatever you want to call it, these fragmented early versions. Let's say I was bullied as a child and I didn't have tools to handle it. I didn't know what to do. So part of me went into a story of life's not safe, or I'm not enough, or God doesn't help me, or whatever the story is. So that part of me is fragmented. And I have to carry that with me moving forward, because you can't not carry it. So I have to hide it. I have to conceal it. It takes energy. It takes a part of my attention. It takes a part of everything. I don't want to see that, so I have to avoid it, right? Multiply that by all the other times that I was hurt, or things happened, divorce, parents, maybe an alcoholic in the family, all these kinds of things. They're different fragmented versions of me. Not only do I have to carry them, I have to conceal them, because I have to pretend that everything's okay. Well, after a while, it's not okay. The teeter-totter tips. And then I notice myself wanting a drink to self-medicate, or I notice myself avoiding relationships, or fill in the blank with 1,000 other behaviors. The bottom line is I got to turn and face the bully. Now, we don't face the bully out there in this practice. We just face the sensation realm, and then we clean up the charge to the bully. Then the bully has no power. We could literally look at The Wizard of Oz as a film, and it has every clue you could ever need for your life in that film. There's so many great pieces of art. The Mona Lisa, you meditate on the Mona Lisa, it answers everything for you as far as creation goes. I've done entire calls on these kinds of things. I love this information because it's hidden for those who don't have eyes to see, ears to hear. Once you start to wake up, which most of you are, you have a powerful community, you start to see the truth everywhere. And more importantly, you start to let go of what doesn't serve you. Trying to get rid of it doesn't work. We first have to own it. And that's what's, oh, that's a hot potato, right? Say, oh, I don't want to own that. It's too hot. I got to get rid of it. Well, good luck with that, because what am I doing? I'm having a relationship with what I'm trying to get rid of. No, we don't want to have the relationship that with something we don't want. We want to have the relationship with truth, with what's in our heart, with what we do want. And the way to do that is to just accept where we are. And that's kind of went on a little, hopefully a zenith back to this of your question. So.
It's beautiful. I agree. Validation is incredibly powerful. To have someone say, no wonder you feel the way you do, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's one thing for, like, if you ever had a friend, maybe they want you to commiserate about how horrible their ex is or whatever, it's like, oh, come over, we'll have some ice cream and we'll talk about what a jerk, Cindy is or Fred is or whatever. And you're like, okay, so we're validating them where they are about how much of a jerk someone was, and they feel a little seen, they feel a little better, and we can bond on this level of what they are. But that's not true validation, because if it was, it would work. It would actually resolve, and their next relationship would be amazing. But if you notice the pattern, they find another one of those people, because the validation isn't me now in my current situation. That's not the true need for validation. Now, it is important. Of course, we need it in our current relationship, but the inner children, the inner child versions of us, that's what we need to validate. And therapy is great. We have some tools that support therapy. We don't claim it's a substitute for good therapists. But when we resolve those aspects at the root level, it's a game changer. And so that's really, because we didn't get validation back then. right? Parents said, "Oh, don't cry. It's not that bad. Oh, it's, you're okay. You're okay. Shh, 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 shh," right? All those things. That's just one aspect of it, right? There's 1,000 others. And that's not what the child needs. That's not what we needed, right? So.
Ah, I love that. It's amazing how those parts of ourselves, they run the show. They pound on the wall and they say, "I still haven't got my needs met. I
Yeah.
still haven't got my needs met." And then the human goes through their life with all of these needs unmet, running the show, and they feel like they're the adult, but they're not when they're under pressure. When their
No.
consciousness is under pressure, suddenly all the little people that they
Yeah.
didn't go anywhere. They didn't go anywhere. They're still there
And
with
that's
done.
why it's never enough. Like that's the definition of addiction, because it's like we call it the itch that we can't scratch. All right, because it's not about that. It's about something deeper, like you're saying, That's why there's never enough fame in Hollywood. There's never enough money in Hollywood, never enough power in politics, because they think once I have that, it'll fill that void in me that, the 8-year-old, 5-year-old, or whatever in the lineage, but it doesn't, because it's not enough. That's why it's more power, more, and that's that unbridled lust for those things is dangerous, especially when it's somebody making decisions for the rest of us in any country. Pick a country, pick history. You can see the examples of it. So yeah, consciousness is it. Helping people wake up is it. Clearing and resolving the past. These are, to me, the only things that truly matter. And there's many ways to do it. I don't claim this is the only way, right? There's lots of great ways. What you're doing, therapists, there's a lot of people doing this, but a lot of people need to do it. We need probably 1,000% of the population to wake up, and then it'll be like that popcorn effect that Maharishi used to talk about. It's like that.
Oh,
So
it's exciting. I feel it. It's coming eventually.
yeah. Yeah, and they say darkest before the dawn. Well, it's been, I don't know about you. I'm older than you are, but I grew up with when we were at war, like in Vietnam, it was actually on the TV every night. Now they don't do that anymore. They don't allow that. So we don't know what's going on. But the point is I grew up watching this Vietnam thing as a kid. It just was like, that feeling. So the darkest before the dawn's been going on for a while. It seems like maybe since, I don't know, last 10,000, 5,000 years. So
Agreed.
we're due for that wake up.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about changing the narrative when it comes to our inner children and all of those parts of ourselves. Some of them are adults. I have some adult selves pounding on the wall. When you work with the narrative, tell me a little bit more about that. How do you work with the narrative of our past?
Well, as I said, I like to keep it simple. I have people thumbnail or put it in a sentence. So people will come sometimes for a session. I don't really do too many in-persons anymore. I do mostly group work. I have Monday call series and things like that, where we offer clearings and knowledge and insights to support people. But when someone comes with something or we interact, they'll automatically, most times, go into a long story that they've told many times to many people. And if that was going to help them, it would have helped by now. So I have them thumbnail it, put it in a sentence or less. I say, yeah, my husband doesn't respect me. Okay, got it, great. And then I have them notice where they feel it. And then I have them breathe in the sensations. Now, sometimes they'll go into emotion and I bring them back to sensation, because that's very important. We got to isolate and transcend the judgment of emotional labels with this practice specifically. With a therapist, emotions are great because they work in a different way. And then as we breathe into that, they breathe into that. I start to work on issues in the family lineage and ancestry that have to do with being disrespected, not feeling seen or heard, believing they're not enough. I really bring together a comprehensive but specific prayer while they're having their direct experience. Now, there's other techniques that I use, but that's the thumbnail simple version of. And then I have them check back in with a sensation, and they feel lighter. They feel it's shifting. Sometimes they'll feel it's expanded outward. Sometimes it's gone. Sometimes, about 10%, it'll be a little more intense, meaning there's another layer specific to that. We'll address that and see where they are. And as we move through these layers, usually a few minutes or so, they notice a big shift, and then the husband, wife doesn't have a charge for them because it wasn't about the husband or wife. That pattern goes way back in their experience. So, yeah.
Oh, genius. I love it. So you have a very specific way of looking at the concept of enlightenment. And I would love for you to shift gears a little bit. Would you define enlightenment and talk a little bit about what you see that as for us, for humanity?
Sure. So I don't use the term enlightenment. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's a beautiful term. It just, for some people, feels like there's that peak on the Himalayas called enlightenment. Someday I'll get there. And yeah, you know, so what I share is that you're already awake. You can't not be awake. And it's kind of like if you're scuba diving or you're swimming in the ocean and a fish comes up to you and says, "Where's the water? Where's the water? Where's the water? I can't find the water." What do you tell the fish? Because the water is consciousness. The water, when the fish surrenders, when the fish lets go of looking for the water, it realizes it is the water. It's one with the water. And that's the wake up. It's so subtle and simple that people just step right past it because they're looking for cherubs to come down and trumpets and all these angels behind the wings coming out and saying, "Yay, we're so glad you woke up. You're wonderful." And that can happen. But oftentimes it's much more subtle, so subtle that the mind is looking for something and it's not a thing at all. In fact, it doesn't fit in the mind. And that's the only obstacle, is trying. Now we could say ignorance is an obstacle, and it is, because first one has to seek waking up or enlightenment, as you said, and then they have to lay it down. They have to stop seeking. Because seeking, where are my keys? I can't find my keys. The harder and more fervently and more desperately I look for my keys, the less likely I will be to see that they're in my hand. I had them the whole time. And it's the act of looking that keeps us from finding, because they're not the same frequency. So we keep it really simple, and we have people notice breath, sensation, anything that's present, silence, stillness. And in that, by mysterious grace, there may be a cognition in the mind that they experience the self or the nothingness or the awareness or the Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't have to be that way. So many people have wakeful experiences all the time. They just don't cognize that that's what's happening. They're looking for something much more grandiose. And it can be that, but usually it's not, at least not initially. But we do get the aha. So, I don't know, you know what I mean? So a lot of times the aha is wild, because we cognize the self and we disappear into it at the same time, as far as the small I. But then of course the small I goes, "Oh my God, I got it. I'm enlightened," right? So it's like, and then of course that becomes another samsara to resolve. So yeah, we just keep it simple and notice what's present. Often I'll offer an exercise to stop the mind, and we'll do that on our program sometimes if people request it, because we're able to transmit that.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into what we addressed actually before our call. The end of this power over paradigm really is what it is. The end of the power over paradigm, entering into the empowerment paradigm, where we are all teachers, where we're all learning about our facet of source and how valuable it is to each. And here I'm 37. I was born in 82 while you were acting. And yet here we can meet with this great intelligence, this great love of humanity, and it's the same. It's the same. It's the same kind of love. It's the same passion for our humankind to reach their best, their very best, the most healed people on the planet, and moving forward to rebuild and recreate a world that will be healed. So with that piece, you empower people. You see yourself as equal to all, and that all are equal to you. How does that affect people when it sure affects me. How does it affect people when you reach out to them as a true equal in equanimity all the time, every day? And people really, they come to you seeing you perhaps as a master, and then you rise, that you lift them up. You lift them up to be with you. Tell me how that affects people.
Yeah, so there's no distinction, because when I do the work, so there's John in his everyday life who, has personal qualities and enjoys, whatever. But when I'm working, it's a completely different experience. I'll say I'm really good at one thing, and that's getting out of the way as far as the personality goes when I'm working. And so I don't make a distinction of any that you just described. And I'm not saying you're making a distinction. You're asking a great question. And so I identify with source, with that present awareness, the intelligence that comes through all of us equally, like you said. And I see the person through that. I don't see them through John's limited perspective or John's. I got to let go of all that, because I would be limiting the bandwidth. It's like one of those T1 lines in the internet world they used to have that are just instant data transmission, to squeezing that information into a dial-up modem, like in the early 90s, where you'd have to use a phone and you put it in a cradle. Most of you are too young to remember those days, but it was very slow. You'd wait 5 minutes for a page to load. So we don't want to limit that bandwidth. So I can't do that. If I did, I wouldn't be able to help people in the way that we do. When I say we, because it's not me, it's me and the intelligence of the internet, the infinite, the internet, the infinite, the creator, right? And so that's doing the work. I don't pretend to, that's why I don't call myself a healer. I don't say, oh, I'm a whatever. Definitely not a master, because the part of me that would identify with any of those is the personality. The part of me that's conscious, that does the actual work, doesn't identify with anything. It's just awareness, pure awareness. And the intelligence that arises within that awareness is a field that matches with whomever I'm speaking with, whoever I'm working on. I can, and when I say I'm using that term loosely, I can speak to the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention, Country Music Awards, Hip Hop Festival. I could speak to a group of priests and rabbis in the same room, and scientists all at the same time, with a language that works. That's not me. I'm not that smart. I promise you. I can show you my high school transcripts. It's a joke. And I'm not kidding. I mean, out of 435 students, I was number 400. I'm not exaggerating. The 35 were special needs. So go figure, maybe I'm special needs. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But the point is there's an intelligence that comes through all of us. That's what does the work. That's what knows what to say. The moment I come in with anything, and all great artists, writers, you as a creative person, you're brimming with creative energy. And I love that you're channeling it into the spiritual realm and helping people, because that's a blessed combo. It's not, that your greatest moments aren't like, oh, I did it, I'm so great. No, you're filled with humility because it came through you, right? Yeah, so that's what it is. So that's what does the work. That's what knows what people need. And how could I ever take credit for that? It's like the moment I don't go, oh, I'm so great. I want them to know that, because that does make me feel good. When people are grateful, not to me, but to their own bodies, to their own process, to the creator, higher power of their understanding, that fills me, because I know they're going to continue moving forward. They're not going to, get stuck in a rut with that empowerment that they have that you talk about. Because to me, true empowerment is never empowerment over another. It's just us showing up fully in that divine light of truth with an awakened heart. And that's infectious. It's a beautiful way to be. So
it is infectious. You've made me laugh. I'm crying. All the things. It's beautiful. It's so pure. So my last question to you, John, we have this amazing brand new on physics.org. They just put it out. We have a brand new map of the heart, and they're calling it finally. It's now, science likes to finally agree on things, and everybody gets excited, which is very exciting, that the heart is a brain. That the heart is a brain, and so is the gut. And that the heart and the gut, they are working really hard. In fact, there's more signals going from the heart and the gut, the body, to the brain than vice versa.
Yeah, I've been talking about this for 20 years. I just did an entire topic on the vagus nerve about the intelligence of that superhighway.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to draw out a little bit of more about that. What's your perspective on how important that nerve is, how vital these two other brains are as we move forward in our healing?
Yeah, well, it's everything. I mean, that's why we have people get in the body and get back home to a simple awareness and being present, because the mind likes to process. So the example would be, let's say lovemaking a little too crass, so I won't use that as an example. Let's say just hand holding conversation, we'll say, with maybe on a first date for somebody, two people on a first date. If I start thinking about, oh, is that the right thing to say? Is that that doesn't, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I'm literally the impulse of love and the beautiful dynamic that's happening between two beings, ideally whole and awake, reflecting the wholeness and just creating a beautiful third-ish experience is just such a blessing. But when someone goes back into the mind, they're literally stagnating or backing up that impulse because the mind likes to process. But this is like this whole core of being, of sensation, the vagus nerve, the gut, the neurons that are everywhere in the body, concentrated in the gut and everywhere in between there in the brain, the vagus nerve and all that too. When that's wide open, when it's fully feeling, if you will, or just there's no bandwidth limitation, it's actually an antenna for something much more than what we carry individually. So when those neurons are all functioning together, they form a brilliant, we'll use this as an analogy. I've never done this before, but if you ever see like like satellite TV, they'll have like one of those dishes outside the house or on the roof. It's kind of like that. It forms this beautiful, parabolic, perfectly shaped, that's connected right into source. So the source energy, all that's coming to us, is getting funneled perfectly through this brilliant antenna of sensation in the body. When that comes through in the date, the first date, instead of trying to process, it's like, if we're making out with somebody, I don't want to be crass with anyone who I have
I think everybody's cool.
Okay. So if there's a flow to, you don't think, okay, should I put my hand on their shoulder? Should I kiss to the left or the right? No, it's a flow of intelligence that you don't think. If you think, you're kicking the butt of the beautiful flow that wants to come through you. And so we need to live our lives from that beautiful flow. We don't know what's coming next. And the mind doesn't like that, but that's okay. You're not the mind. And so I'm kind of talking around a lot of things, and there's a lot going on with this, but it's just keeping it simple and allowing that flow through. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. Yeah. That's okay. Don't judge it, because when it doesn't feel good, it's just showing us there's a little bit of resistance. This could be the time when my parents went through that thing and I thought it was my fault. That's coming up to be resolved. I don't want to judge that. I want to witness the sensation and let it float on by. And now I don't carry it anymore. Right? And then I'm more available for this first date or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, there's a lot to that. We talk about it significantly on the programs I offer, but I love that you brought that up. That's great.
I'm so glad. It's so powerful. It truly is. And I agree with you. This is tapping in, and the more people are doing the healing, really making that a number one priority in their life, then they tap into, some people call it like the real internet.
Yeah.
They actually can feel, they see more, they feel more, they know more. They trust more, and then the miracles begin. Then the getting out of the way happens.
Yeah, and we don't give our power away to the externalized outernet, internet, because all this media stuff that's going on. So many contradictory stories. We did a program recently on gaslighting, and I was talking about how not all, but a lot of the major news sources on the internet, especially, are gaslighting. Because they're causing us to question our perception, what's real. They're giving us completely different stories, acting like each one is the authority. And then they're saying one thing and then saying something else the next day. So it's confusing humanity, but it's all perfect, because if we didn't give our power away, we wouldn't look for that to tell us what's true. Truth is in you. And it's reflected out there when it is. And when it's not, you have a BS meter that goes, it knows. That's why we don't want to let the mind come in and tell us, yeah, but no. Heart, excitement, bliss, yes. Move forward, wow, yes. That's the impulse flow of. Or the opposite is, contraction, doesn't feel right to me, no thank you, healthy boundary, change the channel. You have a meter and it knows. Most humans, there's a lot of static because they've repressed so much for so long. They don't trust that anymore. They don't know, I'm not sure, is that right or wrong? So we got to open that flow again, like you said, and increase the bandwidth so that we can get our life back.
Oh, it's beautiful. I feel it. Thank you for your special heart, your friendship to humanity. It's palpable. You are a friend, a true friend to every person that is on this earth. And with your work and so many others like you, we're going to get there. We're going to get to this healed humanity every day, one little step at a time, each moment in the stillness, it with source, really trusting. Any last words you'd like to share with our audience, John?
What you just said is great. And all of us, when we can look at life as a big puzzle, not as in it's puzzling, but as in each piece, when it's its true nature, fits perfectly. And then the next piece, when I'm my true nature, it fits perfectly. And we all fit together to create this beautiful mosaic that works. And if I'm over here trying to be a lounge singer because my ego wants the attention or didn't feel like they were enough growing up, and I can just get on stage, when in reality, I'm designed to be this piece over here that teaches meditation or is a teacher of children or is a beautiful partner in a relationship. It's not like we all have to be Mother Teresa, right? And it's not like our puzzle piece is permanent. That's the paradox. We're always shifting, but in each moment, there's a truth for us. So the paradox in how creation works, I feel, is that we're all every puzzle piece in the entire mosaic. We take turns. We don't all have to be the robber in the cops and robbers game, but it has to be a possibility. If we deny any aspect of the keyboard in our, to make music, then that aspect we're denying draws our attention. Unfortunately, then we end up playing that out sometimes. So we want to let everything be equal and valid as a choice. In other words, there's no judgment. Now I have my free will to play the keys I prefer. I like if there is a way of coming back. I'm not saying there is because some people don't believe it. I prefer to come back as a rabbi, or I prefer to come back as a policewoman or whatever. Great, because I'm not saying the opposite of that is bad or no, I don't react to it. I have preference, and that's everything. So then we don't have to, right? So actually, technically, nobody has to be the bad guy, bad girl, whatever, unless they want to, and that's fine too. But that doesn't mean aversion can't show up, because to have a cop, you need a robber in order to have that play. I'm using a kind of a very gross level example. So anyway, yes, keeping it really simple.
That is amazing. Right? You just named the game board.
Well, that's kind of what it is. That's a version of it, right?
Yeah. Ironically, I'm a pianist.
Oh.
And you're right. When there's one key that doesn't work, even if it's not like out of tune, but it's just not even playing, you're playing the song and your whole body knows it. Your whole body knows that the key's missing.
That's so true. Oh my gosh.
And when you know the game board, you can step off the game board and be the creator being each moment, choosing, which frequency am I going to play today?
Yeah, it's all valid. Yeah, everything has to be valid. Otherwise, where's our attention? And just really quick, I'll give you a super quick analogy and then we'll go, because I know it's time. If I'm in a restaurant, let's say in Hollywood, and all the big celebrities are there, medium level celebrities, like our favorite actors and everybody, but the elephant man is in the corner and he's taking his thing off, and that's the elephant man, right? Whereas most humans' attention is not going to be on all these people that we admire in their work, maybe musicians, I don't know. It's going to be okay, I'm not supposed to stare. I can't look at the elephant, right? But where's our attention secretly? It's on the elephant man, right? So we don't make those distinctions and it's all equal and valid. And then, we get our free will back.
Yeah, we do. We get our free will back. How cool is that?
Yeah, because denial is it's one of the biggest pieces for humanity. We can't deny wholeness, holy creation is all that is, except for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we just created a different version of reality that's not the whole one, it's that one. And that's what humans have done.
Exactly.
And I get it. So anyway.
Ah, thank you, John. I just love to say everything has a place in this universe. And I'm so excited that we get to spend this time on Earth together here. Thank you for having your beautiful place as John Newton here today, right now. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you. It was great. I loved every moment.
Bless you.
Bye. Thank you.